What's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Before we get started, just want to give a big thank you to everyone who's been watching and supporting these videos. I think when I started posting, I maybe had 50 subscribers, and I think now we're almost up to 8,000, which is crazy to me considering this channel is just me harmonizing insane chess strategies and people yelling. So big thank you to you guys. Anyways, a lot of you guys have been asking questions about the process of harmonizing speech, like how do I figure out the melody notes, or how do I figure out what chords to put behind someone talking. So I figured what we do today is we're gonna take a look at a quick example. I'm gonna walk you through the exact process that I use whenever I'm harmonizing something. That way you guys can see what it looks like from start to finish. Now the clip we're gonna use today is from none other than the man himself, GM Hikaru. So let's take a look at that.
Eric has a erectile dysfunction when he plays me.
All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we have to figure out the melody notes, or whatever pitches are coming out of his mouth. And before we go any further, just to clear the air, I do not have perfect pitch. A lot of you guys have been asking in the comments if I have perfect pitch. The answer is no. I am alongside the many who were cursed with inferior genetics. Now, for those of you that do have perfect pitch, and I really do mean this when I say this, I f***ing hate you. It is such a huge advantage to have perfect pitch. It's the equivalent of if you're playing a game of chess and instead of having a row of pawns, your opponent just has an entire row of queens. No matter how good you are at chess, you will not be able to compete with that. So unfortunately for the rest of us that do not have perfect pitch, we have to figure out the melody notes a different way. There's a few different ways you can do this. Now, if you don't have a great ear, the easiest way is just basically guess and check. So you're gonna listen to the first note of whatever it is you're harmonizing and just go up on the keyboard chromatically until you find the exact note that's your starting pitch. So if we take a look at this clip,
Eric has a...
we listen to where he says Eric. Sounds like D.
Eric has a erect...
Starts on D.
Eric has a erect...
Right, and you can just do that for each pitch. You just go one word at a time, go up until you figure out what note is next. The other way, and probably the more efficient way to do it, is if you can develop what's called relative pitch. Relative pitch is the ability to identify an interval or the distance between two notes. So you might not be able to tell exactly what note it is, but if you know the first note, you can tell what the second note is based off of the distance between it. So an example of this, if we're starting on C, and then our next note is G, I can tell that's a perfect fifth because it sounds like the beginning of the Star Wars theme. Another example, say we're starting on C again, and our next note is A. I can tell that that's a major 6 because it sounds like the beginning of the NBC theme. So there's little tricks that you can use that's going to help make the process a little bit easier. Now there are some apps and websites where you can practice your relative pitch. It'll play an interval for you, and then you'll just have to pick and identify which one it is. I don't know what it's called off the top of my head, so I'm going to leave a link in the description to either an app or a website where you can practice your relative pitch. Now just for time's sake, I've gone ahead and figured out all the melody notes. I'm going to play that for you just so you can hear what it sounds like along with the video.
Eric has a erectile dysfunction when he plays me.
So now that we have all the correct pitches, this is the fun part. This is where you get to be creative. The next step is adding chords behind those melody notes to embellish the melody and make it sound a lot more interesting. Now harmony can get pretty complex. There's no way for me to cover all aspects of harmony in this video without it being a 10-hour long video series. So bear with me here. I'm going to try and simplify things at first, and then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some more complex harmonies. Now to be able to harmonize something, at the bare minimum, you need to at least know your 4 basic types of triads. A triad is a 3-note chord, and the 4 basic types are a major chord, a minor chord, diminished chord, and augmented chord. If you at least know these 4 basic types, then you can go ahead and start harmonizing the melody. What you'll do is you'll just take your first melody note, which in this case is D, and you're going to figure out which triads contain the note D. For major chords, we have D major, B flat major, and G major. All 3 of those contain the note D. Now for minor chords, we have D minor and G minor. Then for diminished chords, we have D diminished, A flat diminished, and B diminished. And then lastly, for augmented chords, we have D augmented, F sharp augmented, and B flat augmented. So right there, just using basic triads, we have 11 different chords that we could put over our first melody note. Now, if you don't have all these triads memorized, I recommend just go to Google, pull up a chart that has the chords and all the notes that it contains. That way you can start learning. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere, and this is a great place to start. Now you just repeat that process with every single melody note. Just figure out what chords you could play over it that contain that same note. Now the real difficult part is linking the chords together in a way that musically makes sense. I mean, you can sit there and play a bunch of random chords that contain the melody note. It's probably going to sound like shit though. This is where having music theory knowledge really helps out. You want to try and create chord progressions that make sense or lead somewhere. So let's take a look at our melody here. Now below I've attached a PDF document that's going to contain the melody written out. That way you can follow along and write your own chords in as you go. So here's the melody that we have so far. Now, one thing that you'll learn as you're doing this is you don't need to harmonize every single note. Sometimes it can get a little jumbled if you're playing too many chords back to back. So in some cases, I'll maybe play one chord every 3 or 4 notes, just depending on what's going on in the video. If he's talking really fast, sometimes it's hard to play that many chords that quickly. So let's try harmonizing the melody with just basic triads. Sounds pretty good. So as you can tell, you can harmonize something with just basic triads and still have it sound good. You don't need to get super complex with your harmonies. If you want to make your harmonies sound more interesting, what you'll need to do is start adding extensions on top of your chords. So if we take a look at the C chord, we can add our 7, 9, 11, and 13. In this case, the 7th would be B, the 9 would be D, the sharp 11 would be F sharp, and then our 13 would be A. So it adds a lot of color to the chord, which is going to make your harmony sound a lot more interesting. So let's take those same chords that we just used to harmonize the melody and let's add some extensions on top of it. So as you can tell, those extensions really add a whole new layer to the chords that you're playing. It's going to make your harmony sound a lot nicer. Now the one thing that really changed the way that I looked at harmony was this concept. I think I heard it from Jacob Collier. He's one of the best musicians in the world. It's the concept that you can take any melody note and play it over any bass note. Let me give an example of what I'm talking about. Let's pretend that our melody note is E. So using extensions, you can make that melody note fit into a chord over any bass note. It's such a cool concept, and it really opens up a huge realm of possibilities for how you can harmonize things. Because unfortunately, a lot of times when you're harmonizing these types of videos, the notes that are coming out of people's mouths are all over the place. Very rarely is it ever going to be in one key. It's constantly changing. So having that ability to take any note and fit it over any bass note is invaluable when you're harmonizing something. The other piece of advice that I can give you if you want to do these types of videos is look for common chord progressions that you can fit into your song. One that I'm always looking for is where can I fit in a 2-5-1? Because a 2-5-1 is going to give you a great resolution point somewhere in the song. If you don't know what a 2-5-1 is, it's a really common chord progression. Let's pretend we're in the key of C. You'd play a minor 2 chord, which would be D minor, G major, C. It's a super common chord progression. You've probably heard it 1,000 times. And it really gives you a nice resolution when you're going from that 5 chord, in this case G, up to C. So if you can find somewhere to put that in the song, it can almost give you like a break point or a point to work towards, and you can figure out the chords in between. So using those triads and extensions that we talked about earlier, let me show you what I came up with for harmonizing this clip.
Eric has erectile dysfunction when he plays me.
And that's pretty much it. So just to recap, the process that I use is figure out the melody, add triads, add extensions, fit it together. That's basically the formula. So I really hope you guys learned something from today's video. Like I said before, it's really hard to fit all these aspects of harmony into such a short video. So I'm sorry if I didn't cover something that you were interested in. If you do have any questions, I'm planning on doing a Q&A video next, just because a lot of you guys have been reaching out to me with questions. So leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.